difference between being a SPAD at number 10 and being a department, I think, is how much less often you see the minister you're working for. Self-evidently, the Prime Minister's attention is a bit like a lighthouse. The beam moves around. It can't possibly be on everyone at the same time. And when the beam is on you, then of course you feel it and you have to operate at the top of your game. And that's where departmental experience can be very helpful. But there'll also be reasonable periods of time where you're not in direct contact with the Prime Minister, particularly if the Prime Minister is doing foreign affairs or some of their other responsibilities. And so during that period you've got to stay motivated, stay energised, and find a way of operating that doesn't just rely on the chemistry of spending time with your Minister, which if you're a departmental SPAD, spending huge amounts of every day with your Minister, you get used to sort of dealing with them all the time. You've got to adjust to a different chemistry, different set of dynamics, and recognise it's a very different job. You're one of many special advisors, not a small number of key people at the top of the tree.
I gave this a lot of thought over the years that I did the job, because inevitably at the centre you're on the receiving end of some hairdryer treatment from minister or special advisor in a department, and I sort of came to the conclusion that the temperament perhaps at the centre that's required is slightly different to that in a department, particularly in a coalition, when quite often you're not at war, but you have to stand your ground and fight for your space in the centre. Sometimes it's right to do what you're told, and sometimes it's right to tell them where to go. And I think that's a whole different temperament to being at the centre and, looking after people, keeping them on board, and also having the strength to say no to some quite senior ministers from time to time. So I do think perhaps it's a slightly different temperament that gets on at the centre as opposed to in departments.
I think the difference between working in department and working in number 10 is in a department you are living and breathing every aspect of the policy agenda, whereas in number 10 you are very much just engaging with those areas that are most important, either that the Prime Minister is personally interested in or that might happen to be dominating the headlines at any one time. I think in a department you much will see things through from start to finish. In number 10 your task is really to try and add value for the period that you're involved in.
Yeah, so working in the Cabinet Office as opposed to working in a delivery department is quite different. So if you're in a delivery department, you've actually got the mechanisms to make things happen. When you're in the Cabinet Office, it's more about influencing other departments and understanding what their agendas are, where you can impact their agenda, where you can get other departments to do things. So that's much more of a challenge and much harder for you to do. But again, it's about identifying who your relationships are with in those other departments, recognising what their priorities are, how what you want to get done can feed into their priorities and improve what it is that they're trying to do. But it is a much more complex relationship, and you have to work much harder at all of your relationships.
I think the most important thing when you're working as a SPAD in number 10 is that you feel that special advisors in departments are being straight with you and honest with you, and that they can say whatever they need to say to you. You can't afford to have a thin skin if you're working in number 10. You have to be prepared to ask for the truth and be prepared to receive it, and to then take a pragmatic view about what you do with it, and to be able to work with special advisors to resolve differences. You have to come at it from the perspective that you're all in the same government, and there is a huge imperative on you to try and fix problems and try and smooth over issues and not add to any existing tensions that may already be there.